Hey everyone, today I'm going to be getting into and discussing what is your RI or your refractive index and why that's important to you. So that's coming up next. Hey, welcome back everyone. It's Brian Easterday here with Eye of the Storm Astrology. Today, I'm going to be giving a short presentation on a concept that I've been working on and developing lately called discovering your RI or your refractive index. So that's what I'm going to be getting to next. But before I get into that, be sure to go ahead and hit that like button, subscribe, and share this video around if you feel called to do so, if you found it valuable. So let's go ahead and dive into what I mean by this. So I'm calling this presentation From Rough to Shining, Discovering Your RI. Now, what is RI? Well, as you can see, obviously it has something to do with gemstones. So before I actually get into what RI is, I want to first talk about what is my goal for this presentation. Well, my goal for this presentation is to really help you learn how to not only identify, but how to unlock your personal treasure chest that you have inside you so you can really start creating that abundance in your life that can help you fulfill your dharma, support your dreams, and all the different things and missions that we're put here to do. We need to be able to have resources to do those things. And the way to bring in and create abundance and resources is by unlocking the talents and the skills that we each have within inside of us, because those are the gifts that we have to share with the rest of the world. So what is refractive index? And this is the measure of the bending of a ray of light when passing from one medium into another. So as this pertains to gemstones, the reason why this is important as a lapidary or as a gem cutter is because each type of stone, whether it's like a beryl, which would include things like emeralds, aquamarines, whether it's a corundum like ruby or sapphire, no matter what type of stone it is, they all have their own refractive index. So this is the way that they change the speed of light as it changes, as it passes through that material. Now, why is this important? Because identifying that RI allows you to identify another very important piece, which we'll discuss in a minute. But in short, this is very important for being able to cut the stone in a way that light comes into the stone and then refracts and bounces back. So that's where you get that scintillation, where the stone, the jewel just sparkles and it is really appealing to the eye. This is based off of RI. If you don't cut it within the boundaries of that, then you're not going to actually see the full brightness of that stone be able to come out. You're not actually going to unlock all its beauty without being aware of this. So how does this apply to us? Well, just like gemstones, we each are unique and have our own way to shine. So we have to identify what our personal RI is. What is the way that we can shine? What are the gifts and talents that we have inside of us that may just need developed, unlocked, refined, and applied? And when we do that, that really allows us to start shining in our lives. But we need tools to help us identify what that RI is. And there's another critical concept that we need to understand first. And that is the critical angle. So what is a critical angle? It's the angle of incidence which causes the light to become parallel to the surface, and that is known as the critical angle. So in short, what does that mean? And why is it important to us? Well, as you can see here in this diagram, this shows a gemstone, right? And it's showing different angles. Well, as we mentioned before, the RI gives you a certain ratio. From that, your critical angle can be determined. So what you see here is if light passes in through the crown of the stone and goes down, and the crown's the top of the sun, by the way, the bottom is the pavilion. If light passes through the crown and goes to the bottom of the pavilion and it's cut too shallow, light will just pass through. If it's cut too deep, it will just bounce out the other side. The way to get the return of light back to your eyes to where you see it, where others can see it, is to actually make sure that you have the correct ratios, the correct critical angle, so that when light comes in, it will hit one side of the pavilion, bounce to the other, and then bounce back up through the crown and return to your eye. This is what gives the stone scintillation. So once we identify what our personal RI is, that determines the critical angle that we need to be aware of in order to make ourselves shine. So what do I mean by this? What I mean is that if you have a certain gift, you have a certain talent, you have whatever your RI is, whatever it is that you have to shine to the world, there is going to be a critical angle in your life. There are going to be certain circumstances, certain parameters in your life that will either allow that light to shine and you to be the best version of yourselves, or to not. So for example, let me give you an example here. If you are a person that requires an hour a day, like to work out, right, to be your best self, to be able to like go out, do whatever you need to do, you having a life where you immediately wake up, go work 16 hours a day, never really get any proper rest, never properly nourish yourself, and never actually have time to do that workout, guess what? That style of life, that structure, that doesn't fit within your critical angle. It's beyond your critical angle. So your critical angle is the parameters through which you live your life. These are the boundaries that you must stay within inside that critical angle. Otherwise, your RI won't shine, because if it is too shallow or too deep, your light is not going to be refracted back in the best way possible. So the critical angle is really us structuring ourselves and our life in such a way that we have parameters and boundaries which allow us to be our best selves. And everybody's critical angle, just like everybody's RI, is going to vary. Like what works for one person or what one person can tolerate and work with may not work for another. So you have to identify what it is for you personally that works and doesn't work for allowing you to be your best self, and then stay within that. So what are 5 steps to making ourselves shine? Well, step number 1, we have to identify what our RI is. We have to identify our critical angles, and then we have to pick a design which fits us. So when you're cutting a gemstone, there's lots of different faceting designs out there, which are, different patterns that you can cut the stone in. There's round brilliants, there's emerald cuts, there's, rose cuts, all sorts of different style of cuts. So every stone having its own personal RI and its own critical angles, certain designs will work with that stone and other ones won't. So the first step is to identify our gifts and the way that we can learn to shine. Then we need to figure out the parameters and the boundaries that we need to structure our life in so that we can bring that light out to the world. And then we need to find a design our life in such a way that it allows both the personal RI and the critical angle to function properly, so we get that proper return of light out into the world from within ourselves. Step number 2, we have to identify our inclusions. What is an inclusion? So in a stone, many times, if you look in stone, what you're going for in a gemstone ideally is like perfect clarity. That's what people want to see. But many times you'll see like little flakes or feathers or some other material in there. It could be a little air bubble. It could be a crack. It could be some other mineral in there. These are what are known as inclusions. Now, inclusions aren't always bad, but when you're cutting a stone, ideally, when you're picking the design of your stone, you want to do so in a way that actually excludes the inclusions, that you're cutting those out whenever you're removing the rough. So if we have inclusions in our life, like what would those be for us as individuals? Well, they could be things like maybe we're lazy. Maybe we don't want to get up and apply ourselves. Maybe we have a problem with addiction, like alcohol or some other drug. Maybe we have a really bad temper. Maybe we are dishonest. Whatever the little things are, whatever the inclusions are, which are the things that can stop your light from shining, we have to identify those. The reason why you don't want an inclusion in a gemstone is because as the light passes in, if there is another object in there that light hits, that is going to change the dispersion of that light. It's actually going to affect the brightness of the stone, how beautiful the stone is, and how much it scintillates. In the same way, our things, our bad habits, our weaknesses, the places where we keep us small, these are our inclusions, and these are the things that can stop us from being successful. that can stop us from really being able to bring our light out into the world. So we need to identify what those are and come up with a plan to start removing those to the best of our ability. Step number 3, then you actually have to start removing your rough. You have to start cutting on the stone, kind of getting it to the rough shape of what you want. And this is done through a process of grinding. It's pressure applied. It's rough. It's literally grinding and removing away things. And just like in our life, in order to shape our life into the thing we want, it's going to take time. It's going to be a process. And when you're cutting a stone, as you're cutting, you might cut the stone a little bit and then you bring it up and you look at it, right? So it's this process of action and then observation, action and observation. Much in the same way, we have to do this with ourselves. We have to start removing a little rough, and then we have to step back. We have to look at ourselves and say, okay, is this looking good? Is the design lining up? Do I need to shift an angle here? Do I need to do something in order to actually make the cut on this stone work? It's the same way with ourselves. We might have to wake up a little earlier. We might have to go to bed a little earlier. We might have to eat better food. We might have to stop using substances. Whatever the thing is, as you're going through and you're refining yourself and you're looking at this, there's this period that you want to go back and forth between like working on yourself and then stepping back and observing and seeing where either you need to continue on the same path or you might need to shift and tweak some things. So step number 4, the next thing we do is actually cut in the facets at the proper angles. So now that we have the stone roughed out, the next thing we do is start laying in actually all the different layers of the cuts and the angles. And when you're doing this, sometimes just a very, very small little adjustment needs to be made. In the gem cutting world, we call it cheating. You might need to cheat a cut a little bit, which means you might need to shift the stone just a little bit, just to make that meet point line up, to make that facet even with the other one. You want all of them to be uniform, to look nice, all your meet points, which is where different facets come together, to be even, et cetera, et cetera. You don't want them all over the place and ugly and random and discombobulated, because that's not going to reflect the light back properly. It needs to be properly cut and in an organized way. And when you look at the geometric pattern in a gemstone, like really get up and look at a well-faceted stone, it's absolutely beautiful. In the same way, this is how we need to arrange our life. Sometimes we might be cutting a facet. And like I said, there might be this part of us, our life, this one area of our life, that it's not that facet is completely wrong. It just needs the angle shifted a little bit or something like that. So this is why this period of observation as we're cutting is useful, to cut a little and look a lot. So then as you're doing that and you're observing yourself, you can see, okay, I'm applying this tactic in business. I'm getting some decent results with it, but maybe if I just tweak it just a little bit, maybe if I just shift this facet a little bit, oh, my workout, I was doing good, but I feel like I stalled out. Well, maybe if I just shift my workout a little bit, maybe if I shift my diet a little bit, shift my sleep schedule, whatever that little facet may be, sometimes you just need that little bit of adjustment to make everything come into place. Now, step number 5. Once we have all our facets cut in properly and they're where they need to be, this is the refining and polishing stage. So we're moving to a higher grit. Now, if you were to zoom in at a facet on a microscopic level, what you would look at is when you first cut it, there's going to be a lot more rough bumps and hills. And this is because when we're cutting a gemstone, we're using, just like with sandpaper, how there's different grits, and the lower the number, the rougher the grit, which means like the bigger the piece of material and the more chunks of material it'll remove as it's being used. The higher the number, the smaller or the finer the grit, it will remove less material. You use this for polishing. So you start with a very rough grit that's going to take away a lot of material, and then you move to finer and finer grits that take away less and less, and it's more about refining. This same process with us. Sometimes when we start, when we're at our worst, whatever we need to develop ourselves, we're going to have a lot of work to do. We're going to have a lot of rough, and we're going to need some serious tools to really help us remove some of that rough. But eventually, when we get to the point that everything's lined up, and then it's just a matter of polishing and refining our life into place, this is what we're going to do. So as I was mentioning, the coarser the grit, the more there's going to be kind of these microscopic little bumps and hills on that facet. The effect this is going to have is that as light enters these, it's going to hit each one of those little bumps and bounce off and disperse in different ways. So the reflection, the refraction of that light is not going to be evenly dispersed back to your eye. It's going to not be as shiny, in short, right? Not be as brilliant. So what we do is as we take it to a finer and finer grit and a higher and higher polish, all those little bumps, if you're looking at it on a microscopic level, will start to get less and less and less. And the goal is eventually to have them flat and even in parallel, right? All these scratches. That way, when the light comes through, it penetrates in evenly and is refracted back, bounced back in an even way as well. So it's evenly dispersed to your eyes. That's when the stone really can shine in the way that it was really meant to be. It can be its best version because it has been properly polished and refined to a state of perfection. And this is the same thing we have to do in our life. You know, this is a process. You have to start from the beginning and work yourself all the way through. And it's something that can take a very long time. And it's something that never stops. We never stop polishing and refining ourselves. But the better we get at refining and polishing our lives, the more our lives will shine. So in summary here, each of us are unique and have a gift to share with the world. And sharing that gift is our mission, or our dharma, as we look at it in the Vedic tradition. So we need to identify what that is. What is our mission? That's our RI. You know, what are our gifts, the ways that we can fulfill that. Our parameters which let us shine, those are our critical angles. We have to figure out what works in our life, what boundaries, what structure do we need to have in place so we can be the best version of ourselves. Then we need to take action and grind away our rough, and we need to know what to keep and what to rid ourselves of. What is the material that's good, that it just needs polished, you know, or cut, refined, you know, polished up? And what material, like inclusions and other material that we don't need, that we can get rid of? What bad habits are we holding on to that we can let go of? Then we need to refine and polish ourselves so that we reflect the light more clearly. And really, to do all this, what we need are tools that can assist us in that process. So what are some of those tools? Well, for me, in my experience, the most valuable tool that I've found for helping us to discover our strengths and weaknesses is Vedic astrology. It allows us to understand ourselves in a deeper and a more respectful way. And what I mean by that is, like, when you start to understand your chart, you start to see where your strengths and your weaknesses are, why you do certain things the way you do, and then you can have more respect and acceptance for yourself. Well, that same thing applies to others as well. You can start looking at their chart. You can start seeing how they are as an individual and start respecting and admiring them for the individual and the unique way, like, that they can shine. What, you know, because just because they're a different type of stone than you, just because their RI is different, doesn't mean that stone isn't equally as beautiful. You know, an emerald and a sapphire or a ruby, they have a different RI, but they're all beautiful, right? Same thing here. The next thing Vedic astrology is useful for is because it helps us identify our karmic and our dharmic goals. Like, what are our karmas? What are our lessons that we're meant to live? And what is our mission that we're supposed to accomplish? And it really shows us how to align with the universe to achieve our goals and much more. You know, imagine a surfer that goes out into the ocean. He doesn't try to shape the waves. He doesn't fight them, because if he does that, he's not going to have a good time. He's going to lose. It's the same thing with the universe. You have to learn to observe what the psychic weather is and learn how to ride that wave, ride with it, instead of trying to swim against it, instead of trying to fight it. And Vedic astrology is literally the map that shows us what the universal, what those cosmic waves are looking like, so we can align ourselves and work with them to our benefit instead of trying to fight them to our detriment. So that's going to wrap this one up, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, be sure to hit that like button, share the video around, and be sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on learning any other lessons that can help you turn your challenges into strengths. If you're interested in any of my other, follow me on any of my other social media, TikTok, Instagram, so on and so forth, you can click the link below in the description to my link tree, and that will also take you to my website to be able to book consultations, courses, whatever that may be. So thanks for tuning in, guys. I hope you enjoyed this, and I'll see you next time.